Hey everyone, welcome to Insert Game here. I'm Brian.
And I'm Jared.
And I'm Addison.
And boy, do we have some things to talk about today.
Yeah, a lot of y'all were getting spicy before we even got into the recording room, so I'm curious to see what y'all are going to say about today.
For Animal Crossing fans, Friday was a beautiful day. For 21 minutes and 55 seconds, Animal Crossing fans were overjoyed, enraptured. It was a beautiful moment. And then that moment ended.
With one big brick to the head. Because, oh boy, I've been like, I just said it before we started recording, but man, have I got things to say.
Yeah. What did they say?
Well, what they said was, first of all, as Brian said, we had a great, happy Animal Crossing Direct with lots of really cool stuff, which I will say there was a lot of stuff in the Animal Crossing Direct that actually looks really, really cool. It's actually gotten me interested in potentially picking the game back up again. No joke.
I'm definitely picking it up again.
So that's all well and good. But then close to the end, they hit us with a bombshell, and it's not a good one. First of all, they coupled this in by saying that they are including the paid Animal Crossing DLC that's coming out November 5th. They're bundling that in with their new Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, which
what was that
talked
called?
about
Happy Homes?
Happy Home Paradise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Happy Home Paradise is the paid DLC that's coming out for Animal Crossing. It looks really, really good, actually. Like, I honestly didn't think I'd ever be picking Animal Crossing back up again, but this DLC has me curious, and they decided to include the news, like I said, that it's going to be bundled in with the Switch Online expansion pack. So if you upgrade to that new Switch Online expansion pack that we talked about in the last podcast, you'll essentially get it included with your subscription at no additional cost, which is nice. If you're an Animal Crossing fan, that's certainly a nice gesture. But
it's a boon.
Yeah, exactly. It's a boon. But then the brick to the head hit, and it was when they revealed the pricing of the expansion pack. And it is not good. It is, for those unaware, which I'm sure many are aware at this point, the base subscription for Nintendo Switch Online is $20 a year for a single person or $35 a year for a family plan of up to 8 people. With the expansion pack, it is now going to be $50 a year for a single person or $80 a year for a family group of up to 8 people. And I think a lot of people have kind of agreed that that is bold pricing, to say the least.
Yeah, bold pricing.
Well, I think, remember, last episode, we actually talked about this, and we talked about the pricing. And we even kind of said, I can't see the family plan going over $50. $50 kind of like that point of pricey, but not too pricey. And I was shocked when 80. That's more than double. That's more than double.
That's more like, even with the individual plan, like that is 2.5 times the price of the base plan.
I have yet to see a single poll online that is not heavily swayed to it's a little too high or it's an absolute ripoff. Like, it is absolutely tipping over to that side heavily in every corner of the internet from what I've seen.
Oh yeah. Well, on the video that Nintendo released, it has 61,000 dislikes versus 15,000 likes.
Right.
I actually spent a good deal of time today trying to find a way to list videos by dislike, because I wanted to see how close this has gotten to Nintendo's most disliked video. But it's got to be up there. 61,000 dislikes.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
That's not pretty. And you know what's even worse about this is the original Nintendo Switch Online service was already fairly disliked by a lot of people, but you still had a lot of people defending it, saying, well, actually, if you really look into it, there's actually some decent value here, which I actually personally kind of agree with. Like, I personally think Switch Online is perfectly fine for what you get for the price. Like, $20 a year is very cheap when, it gets you access to a lot, like a big library of over 100 NES and SNES games, along with cloud save backups and access to online. Like, I think that's fair. It's, in my opinion, I kind of like it more than what Sony and Microsoft do, where you're forced to pay this $60 a year premium service just to be able to play online. And like they try to justify it by having like all this other stuff packed in there. You get free games every month and all this stuff, exclusive discounts, which if you're super into the PlayStation ecosystem, PlayStation Plus is absolutely worth it. But if you're not, it's not really worth it. And you're just kind of like, well, I just want access to be able to play online. Why do I have to pay for all this other stuff to be able to just do that? So it's nice that Nintendo actually is just like, well, we have to charge for the online to keep the services up, but we're at least keeping it cheap. And I'm just like, all right, you know what? If they're keeping it cheap and they're including some extra bonuses like NES and SNES with that, I was personally okay with that. But even the people who are defending the original NSO are not defending this. Like, this is too bold. And that's saying it generously.
I feel like the big problem is right now, they don't offer enough that appeals to everyone. Whereas right now, the expansion pass only includes stuff that appeals to niche groups.
So like the Animal Crossing DLC being packed in is really cool, but you have to be an Animal Crossing fan to be able to take advantage of that benefit. If you are not playing Animal Crossing, then okay, then what am I paying for then? Oh, well, you get N64 and Genesis games. Well, what if you don't care about the Genesis games? All you're getting is the N64 games.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and this is the point where you say, then the expansion pack is not for you.
And then you just don't get it. Yeah.
Which, at least Nintendo has kept the option available. If you don't care about these new things, that's perfectly okay. You can stick with the original plan.
And I will give them that. They are at least making it optional. I will at least give them that. Like, even outside of looking at the fact that it's optional, I still have a hard time wrapping my head around this pricing. And I was telling Brian that if it wasn't for the fact that I have a family plan, I probably wouldn't get this.
Oh yeah. No, and that's honestly, I think, the thing that makes it a lot more affordable, because for a single user, that's a bit heavier of a hit because you're the one footing the entire bill. But on a family plan, you can split the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and I'm going to be getting the expansion pack because of the family plan, because I have a family plan that currently has 7 people. I'm currently looking for an 8th person. I have a few people in mind who might come in, but once I have the family plan full of 8 people, it's split amongst each person, and each person only pays $10 a year. So if you do the family plan, it's affordable.
Right.
But if you do the single person plan, or even if you do the family plan with only 2, maybe 3 people, it's a bit of a hit. And for what you get, I have to agree with what a lot of people saying is that the value just isn't really there for the price.
So I'm going to agree with you there, but I'm going to add one word that changes the trajectory of my thinking. The value for the price isn't there yet.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I get what they're trying to do. What Nintendo wants to do is they want to create the Netflix service of classic games. Like, I think most people agree that's what they're trying to do. And it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just, I think Nintendo is doing a terrible job at executing it.
Well,
not necessarily. I have some thoughts, but go ahead, Brian. I'll let you.
So I feel like going back, let's go back 3 years ago, okay? We were sitting in a Nintendo Direct, and they were laying out all of their plans for Nintendo Switch Online. What Nintendo Switch Online offered was online multiplayer, cloud backups, which, I mean, let's all agree, cloud backups are extremely necessary. A totally awesome smartphone app, which let's all agree, it's terrible. but that's beside the point.
We all just use Discord.
And 20 NES games. And we were all bracing, saying, okay, how much is this going to cost? We all know this is not going to be cheap. How much are you going to charge us for this, Nintendo? And it was incredibly reasonable. They went way below our expectations with the price, and all of the rest of us are going, hey, this is great. And I kind of feel like we've set ourselves up for disaster now, and so did Nintendo. I feel like when it came to the original, Nintendo was dabbling. They were like, okay, let's offer this service. I don't know if everyone wants it, so we're going to undercut a little bit. And now Nintendo has been sitting there the last year and a half saying there's so much more that we want to do with our online services, but we charge way too little. And that they are now having to reset, and everybody's not upset by necessarily the price as much as it is the sticker shock. It's the whole that's a huge jump where Nintendo has gone from undercutting because they're afraid nobody's going to subscribe to overshooting a little bit because they know where they want to go, they know what it's going to cost, and there's one word that explains why they're charging so much, and that is licensing.
I knew you were going to say that too. I knew you were going to say that. I was about to say the exact same thing as licensing.
Yeah,
because
but yeah, they've definitely moved past the prototype phase, engaging public interest, and now they see a vaunted interest and a potential profit that they can gain from this higher sticker price. And in conjunction with what you're saying, this tells me if they're going to be planning to charge this much, they're going to be rolling out more features and more games beyond what they have already announced.
I agree.
I think the reason why a lot of people are upset about this pricing is a lot of people, including myself, are just not feeling confident in the fact that Nintendo is going to add a whole lot more to the service because they've been kind of proving themselves unreliable when it comes to just their base service. And I get that the base service is kind of low price, but they went from releasing new games for NSO on a monthly basis to, oh, we're just going to release new games whenever we can. You know, sometimes we'll go 2 months, sometimes we'll go 3 months, sometimes we'll go 4 or 5 months without releasing new NES or SNES games. It's so inconsistent, and whenever they do release something, it's usually not really anything noteworthy. And it feels like they're just kind of drip feeding for what people are paying. I feel like people would probably accept this price point more if they felt confident that Nintendo was going to do more to bring more to the service. Like if they said something like, we have more systems that we'll be adding to the service in the future, and we're also going to be adding new games to the service every month guaranteed. I feel like if they did something like that, people would feel better about it.
Yeah, you want an idea of what Nintendo has planned for it. You want essentially a promissory note from them.
Yeah, and I completely sympathize with people on that. If you're going to charge us this much money for a service, show us what we're paying for, because all you're saying is there's more games coming in the future. What does that mean? Like, what are the specifics? Are you going to add more systems? Are you going to bring Game Boy and GameCube maybe? Are you going to bring N64 games every month? Like, what are the specifics? Like, you can't just say, we're going to bring more in the future. No, get more specific, because if you're going to ask for a price like this, we need more info.
Yeah, it's essentially like we're writing a blank check to Nintendo and we don't know what we're paying for.
Exactly. And I completely understand why people are upset about this and why they don't have confidence that they'll add more. I'm not saying that they won't. They very well could prove a lot of people wrong. Maybe a year from now, it'll be more than worth the $50 a year, for all we know. But we just don't know.
I do kind of agree with you, and I understand why people are wary that Nintendo aren't going to release very much after this. I look at history, and I look at the fact that they started with 20 games, and they now have 125 games. Yes, they were releasing more periodically at the beginning, but I think that they really wanted to get that, number of 20 up really quickly. And then they did hit a point where they ran out of good games, which is when they started the drip feeding, and they release a few to keep themselves relevant. I look at what they've released with the expansion pass, which is 24 new games, going up to 33 soon when they release the second wave of N64 games. But there's 3 things that I see them doing going forward based upon what is included in this expansion pass. The N64 tells me they're going to be releasing more modern systems than we've seen with the regular Nintendo Switch Online. Before now, I said there's no way they're going to release the GameCube onto Nintendo Switch Online. With this, I see that as a possibility. The Genesis tells me there's going to be more focus on third-party systems. We might get a Dreamcast. We might get other third-party classic consoles coming to this service. And the Animal Crossing DLC tells me other DLC might be included as well. We might wake up next month and all of a sudden the Breath of the Wild DLC is included.
I absolutely agree, because the fact that they've got some of these things already getting rolled in and the potential for future development, I think that would help justify the cost a bit more, especially if it is kind of rolling bonuses or content that is available.
If the whole reason behind the big price, I mean, we all know a big reason behind the price is for sure licensing. I mean, you got Banjo-Kazooie on there. Like, obviously there was some backdoor deals that had to happen to make that little thing actually become a reality. Like, that couldn't have been easy to pull off. And then you have the Sega Genesis games, which of course had to be licensed out. So obviously licensing had a big play in the pricing. And if Nintendo has future plans to build this up even further and make it worth the price down the line, great. Talk to us about it. Tell us what you have planned so that we know what we're paying for.
And there is, I think, where Nintendo made their biggest mistake. I think that everything that I said, plus that big price tag, shows they have big plans. I think that the price tag matches their big plans, and in time, it will be worth it. Their mistake was not making the reveal and not making the initial promises big enough to match that price tag. That's where Nintendo messed up.
I can understand why they would have potential problems announcing some things, though, because they may be locked in contractually with like NDAs and stuff. Like, they aren't able to talk about some of the stuff they have planned until it's ready to roll out.
So here's what I really want to know. Let's go back to talking about DLC. And in particular, because this is what's being initially offered, I'm going to focus on the Animal Crossing DLC, but this is going to be applied to many kinds of DLC. In the Animal Crossing DLC, it adds functionality to the core game that doesn't exist without the DLC. There are certain things you can do on your island with the DLC that you can't do without it. What happens to that functionality if you decide after 1 year, I don't want the expansion pack? What happens?
Well, it's weird because the DLC content would be downloaded once and added to the game file. So it may just be, if you bought the expansion once and you download it and add it, it may just become a part of the core game. I don't know how they have that programmed and set up.
Well, I do know that they did confirm that if you're subscribed to the expansion pack and that's how you get the Animal Crossing DLC, if you let your plan expire, you no longer have access to the DLC content. They did confirm that.
Yeah, but like, what if you had items and stuff from the DLC? Like, would they just disappear off your island?
My thoughts exactly. I mean, I can understand not being able to go to the happy home place or whatever it is, and do that. But the items you bring back to your island, which your island is what's available in the base game, does that just poof? It's off the shelf. You know,
I have no idea.
I don't think they would be able to do that, because not only would that piss people off, but then at that point, it's just like their entire homes would be redesigned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like somebody came in and stole all your stuff.
Yeah. I will point out that maybe it could be something like what Super Smash Bros. Ultimate does, where like if you don't own DLC fighters, you can't select them and use them. But if you're playing against people online who have them, the files still exist in your game to where you see them using those characters. So it could be that maybe what happens is you still hang on to a lot of the stuff that you had on your island and in your house, before the DLC expired, but you just can't go get more of it. You can just keep the ones that you ended up getting while you had an active subscription. So
No, I like the idea of like all of your stuff getting replaced by giant error symbols.
So since we're talking about Animal Crossing, can we just kind of slide into talking about that update? Because it's such a good update. I don't want it to be fully overshadowed by the expansion pack pricing.
Can I talk about one more thing before we shift topics then?
Sure.
What's that?
So we were talking about where they plan on going from here with the data plan and everything. And from a marketing standpoint, this was something I did want to make sure we talk about. If they had rolled out a smaller version of this and then they expand the online again and they have to raise the price again, do you think people would be happy about it?
I don't think they would. And honestly, a lot of people online right now are kind of expecting that if Nintendo was to add something like GameCube or something like that down the line, they probably would raise the price again.
And I don't think that's the case, because at least from the way that I would understand how to handle this situation from a marketing standpoint, nobody would ever be happy about raising the price of something.
Right. I mean, heck, Netflix raises the price every 2 years and nobody's ever happy about it.
Right. So what you do, and this is just a little bit of marketing manipulation, is you figure out, okay, how much do we need to increase the price so we don't have to touch it ever again and or for an extended period of time. And I think that this is what this situation is especially the increase in the family pass, because if you had 8 people paying that reduced rate, it was enough to keep the system afloat, but it wasn't enough for it to make a profit and grow. I feel like that's what they're doing with this increased price, is they're trying to provide the funding for this service to continue to grow and expand while also making sure that it's profitable for them as a business instead of keeping it a skeleton crew on it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think they're planning for the future. Again, going back to the original Switch Online, started with 20 games, ended up with 125 games. Yes, a lot of those games aren't really the greatest, but still, it shows they started with something and they added value to it over the years. I don't think they're going to raise the price again. Such a huge hike tells me they have big plans and they're laying the foundation for those plans.
Yeah, and I think this is going to go for the duration of the lifetime of the Switch.
Yeah.
Like I don't foresee them raising the price anytime soon, and unfortunately that means this is a one-time sticker shock, but as they continue to roll out more and more content over time, more and more people may decide, okay, maybe it's worth it now.
And the beautiful thing is, since it's 2 different tiers, if you do not think it's a good value right now, wait for a year and see what they add.
Yep.
Moving on. Last Saturday, Nintendo put out a poll on YouTube and asked, what were you most excited about from the Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct? 62% of respondents said, Froggy Chair. I love that Nintendo even had that as an option. They know their fan base.
They do. They do. I love that they made that an option in the poll. And of course it was like 60-something% of the poll.
Yeah.
But what a massive update. And I have to tell you, going into this, like I was sitting here at my desk watching the Direct saying, my literal thoughts were, this is too little too late. You should have come out with this 6 months ago. I was bored with Animal Crossing 6 months ago. I want to see what you got, but I mean, you've already lost me. And by the end, I was all in.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I finally got to watch the Animal Crossing Direct today before we started recording this podcast, and I was of the same mindset. I'm just like, I'm kind of done with Animal Crossing, so I mean, I'm curious to see what you're going to be adding. So let's have a look. And then by the time I was done with it, I was like, you might actually be pulling me back into this game. Like, this looks amazing. Like,
yeah, y'all seem a lot more swayed than I am.
Did you get a chance to watch it?
Yes, I did. And for me, it's like the way that I play video games is I pick it up, I play it, I enjoy it for what it is at the time, and then I move on because I want a new experience. And Animal Crossing is a game that I have to be in a very particular mood, and it offers a lot of the same thing. Even with this DLC, it's more of the same stuff with just extra things you can do it with. So the whole core concept is, taking care of your island, designing the island and other things. And now you can build these happy homes, which for me, it just feels like retirement homes for animals and villagers that I don't want on my island. Just here, I'll give you a place. Don't visit me anymore. Just stay over here.
Go away.
I'll make it nice. Just leave me alone. But it's more of that, just like I have all these items, I can customize them, I can place them around, I can make things look nice. And I've already done that with the base game to the amount that I'm, content with. But that frog chair, though.
No, I can understand that. And yeah, I mentioned before it was too little too late, that they should have come out with this 6 months ago. But having some time to think about it, I think there's a reason why they waited so long to release this. And it's exactly what you said, Jared. You finish a game, you have that experience, you move on to experience something else. And I think most people who got Animal Crossing day one, they've already put it down. They've already set it aside. And now Nintendo's saying, hey, here's a way to come back. Here's a little something new. And I know whenever I open up Animal Crossing and fix my bed head and destroy the roaches that are going to be in my house, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, this is kind of nice. Let's see what we can do with this.
For people that love designing and creating and that type of stuff, like I could totally see this being up their alley. So I'm not saying that this is a bad DLC. Yeah, it's definitely DLC is the gateway drug of video games, in my opinion, just to get people roped back in. But it's definitely, for people that like the Animal Crossing formula, this is definitely a charming update for them.
Yeah.
Whereas I come from the cynicism of DLC stands for dirty lumps of cash.
I mean, yeah, I felt like the DLC here is almost an entirely new side game being sold for $25, which is actually a reasonably good price for a small side game.
It does add a lot for what you're paying for. Like $25 is a great price for a lot of the stuff that you're getting. And one thing that I do like about it is that it focuses on, in my opinion, the most important aspect of Animal Crossing. And
painting Godzilla statues?
Yes. And also, I'm sorry about the lawnmower in the background. I can't do anything about it.
It's all right.
But in my opinion, my favorite thing about Animal Crossing was designing things, designing the house, decorating the island and things like that. Like, I loved doing stuff like that. What I hated, or not necessarily hated, just was annoying to me, was whenever I had a specific plan set up for how I wanted to design the island, getting the things that I needed to be able to do that was such a pain. Like, oh, I want to build this fence. I need to go make a whole bunch of fences. Oh, you can't bulk craft them, so you're going to have to spend like the next 5-10 minutes crafting fences so that you can go out and place the fences down. Like, I like that this one is kind of taking this approach of like prioritizing more the designer aspect of Animal Crossing. And I like that.
It's a much slower burn of a game, because I know I pick up and put down games really quick, because it's just like, all right, what do we got? And then I'll churn through it really quick and be done with it. So it's just the fact that like all the stuff I would want to do design wise, I can't get the items that I want to design with, because the shop only like repopulates once a day. So it's just kind of like, yeah. I'd always be the one whenever the first Animal Crossing game came out, I would do the time skips and stuff, because it's just like, I want my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and I was on the other side saying, it's kind of nice that it actually follows a real day-night cycle. And once I'm done for the day, okay, I have to put this down and pick it back up tomorrow. I actually appreciated that. Not many games do that.
Yeah, it plays with the idea of trying to get more life and realism out of it. And there is also some cleverness with trying to design and work with what you've got. And then whenever you get that like one piece that ties everything together, you're just like, yes, it is complete.
There was one thing in that Animal Crossing Direct that immediately caught my eye, because I whenever you see like a piece of furniture in that game and you just are immediately like, I want it. And they showed off a piece of furniture in that direct that wasn't the Froggy chair, that I immediately just saw, and I'm just like, I want that.
What was it? The desk with the monitors?
Yes,
I know. I did
want
the same
that.
thing. It's like I have to have that. That's going in my house. That
It
is
was
mine.
like a whole gaming desk with like the gaming monitors and PC. I was like, oh, give me that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want that in my house.
I want that in my real house. I mean,
Yeah. Oh my God, I saw that and I just went crazy about that. I was just like, all right, now you're going to make me want to play Animal Crossing again just so I can get my hands on that.
there were some great quality of life improvements. The permanent ladders, I always hated having to go and dig out my ladder just to be able to go up. The permanent ladders is great. I like how they're expanding Harv's Island and bringing the different, because there are some vendors like the I can't remember the guy's name, but the shrubbery guy. He would come and he would sell you plants and shrubbery. I think it was a sloth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I like switching out my shrubbery and other vegetation depending upon the seasons. And it was always hit or miss whether or not he would come to my island. And I can't check it every day. So being able to open up a place for all these vendors to come and set up a shop, that's a really great quality of life improvement.
Yeah, that caters to my side of things. Like, I
It
want
really
access
does.
now.
I thought the island ordinances thing was really weird.
Yes.
It's like, we're going to force you guys up at 6 a.m. It's like,
But it's giving power to the players.
It really is.
I understand that because it was like I had that problem because I only got a chance to play Animal Crossing at night. And if there was a villager I really liked, but they were like a morning villager, I never got a chance to interact with them because they were asleep by the time I got to play the game.
Yep.
yeah. Well, yeah,
It's
Animal
so
Crossing came out when we were in lockdown, and we could be on there all day. And while, yes, there are some parts of the world that are still under a semi-lockdown, many of us are back in the workforce. And so being able to customize our Animal Crossing experience to the time of day that suits us is a great improvement.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a very nice improvement that they're
I did have a
having.
question though, because like there was an ordinance on the list that said bell ordinance, and I was just like, "What are you extorting your
What?
villagers for money?"
I got to
Bell
look this up now.
ordinance?
I'm pretty sure I saw one that said bell ordinance, if memory serves. And I was just like, "What is that in relation to?"
Pay me to live on my island.
You don't get to be awake unless you pay me money.
Okay, so this was a thing in New Leaf, apparently. Bell Boom / Wealthy Town. The Bell Boom Ordinance modifies the bell economy for the benefits of all town citizens. This ordinance changes the number of bells the player may receive from selling and the cost of buying items, as well as increasing the size of the premium tier list at retail. Shops sell and buy most item for 1.2 times the original price. So basically, it's inflation.
Lovely.
Great.
Which
I mean,
it's a real world right there. I mean, who doesn't love inflation during a pandemic?
Yeah, but I mean, it allows you to earn a bit more bells off of everything that you're doing.
It does, yeah.
I do like everything that they're doing with the game. I do feel like they are kind of stepping away from that crafting edition, though. I feel like they're kind of stepping away from that idea, which I think is kind of a shame because I think crafting is such a great idea for Animal Crossing. It's just they're not doing enough with it. So I kind of wish that they did more with crafting, streamlined it to make it a bigger aspect of Animal Crossing. But
I always felt like crafting was one of the weaker parts of the game. It
was.
yeah,
was tedious.
It was one of the weaker parts because it doesn't really feel like they did enough with crafting. I feel like if they had done a lot more with it, it would have been a much bigger part. But I get it. Animal Crossing is more about wanting to design your home and islands and stuff like that. So they want to focus more on that aspect. I still feel like, though, that if they worked more on the crafting, it would have been a much more appealing part of the game. So.
Yeah.
I had a friend describe Animal Crossing to me in a brilliant way.
And what's
Animal
that?
Crossing is hoarding, but you're able to hide all the stuff you're not actually wanting to have on display.
Yes, that is very true.
Because
That is very true.
Because you're essentially just putting it all into one massive bag of holding that is hidden away somewhere.
Yeah, your house storage or whatever.
Yep.
Yep.
It's an insanely big attic.
A gigantic attic. Just the biggest attic you could possibly imagine.
Well, to close things out for today, I just want to say, I have to mention it, Sora for Smash.
Yep. And I know I'm happy about it, but I know there's one person in here who was just kind of like, meh.
What are you talking about?
I know it's
I'm
not
excited that they're going to nerf Kazuya.
Well, I am excited, and it's coming out tonight as of the day of this recording.
Actually, yeah, it's coming out today.
I'm going to be probably sometime tomorrow downloading that and checking them out because I love Sora. I love Kingdom Hearts.
For me personally, when they were doing the announcement for Sora, when I saw that Mickey Mouse keychain, I will admit I did smile and get excited. It wasn't a character that made me get going like jumping for joy like Banjo-Kazooie or King K. Rool, etc. But it definitely was a character that I was cool with. I love the Kingdom Hearts games. I especially love 1 and 2. So I was perfectly fine with Sora being in Smash. And of course, he's the most requested character according to the ballot. Sakurai himself said that when they held the ballot, the Smash ballot, back in I think 2014 or something like that, they concluded that Sora was the number one most requested fighter.
Well, I think he was the perfect fighter to be the last fighter and to end it all with. There are some fighters like Banjo-Kazooie that were extremely requested by the West. You know, Japan wasn't too excited about Banjo-Kazooie. It was the Western world that really wanted him. Meanwhile, you have characters like Hero that Japan just went crazy over, and people in the West were like, oh, yay, that's great. Kingdom Hearts and Sora in particular is a character and a series that's loved by both the East and the West. Japan, America, and the rest of the world wanted this, and I can't think of another character that could have created as much excitement as Sora.
Dig Dug.
Dig Dug.
I just want a final Smash where he inflates them and they explode because the visuals would be amazing.
Boom. The other thing about Sora too is that he's a legal nightmare because of the agreements between Disney and Square Enix. Because Disney is the main owner of the Kingdom Hearts IP. They own the character entirely. So that was already going to make things difficult. But at the same time, Disney has this agreement with Square Enix that Disney can't do anything with the Kingdom Hearts IP without the approval of Square Enix. But because Disney has the rights to Kingdom Hearts, Square Enix can't do anything without approaching Disney about it. So it's this weird back and forth for the rights holding of this franchise.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a legal nightmare. So I personally think that it's impressive that they managed to pull it off at all.
I feel like Sora has less strings attached than the rest of the franchise because he's an original character.
And I feel like Kingdom Hearts, like we all know that Disney is ruthless when it comes to their IPs. But I feel like they care a little less about Kingdom Hearts. You don't see anything Kingdom Hearts related in the Disney stores and Disney World and, you know, in any of the places where Disney likes to show the world, I'm here. Kingdom Hearts is kind of like that awkward cousin who they just don't really care that much about. I mean, they'll still protect their IP. They're still family, but they're the awkward cousin they don't talk about. And so I kind of feel like I just don't think that they cared as much.
Yeah, it's because Sora isn't a princess.
Exactly. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
He is a princess. How many times do we have to save that poor kid?
I mean, I think isn't Kyrie technically considered a Disney princess now?
No.
She's a princess of light. But if you tried to tell Disney she's a Disney princess, they'd shut you down so hard you couldn't breathe for the next 10 weeks.
Yep.
I mean, to me, it makes sense because in the first Kingdom Hearts, like all the princesses of light were the Disney princesses, and Kairi was one of them.
Yeah,
she was the only one.
That's not Disney canon, though.
I know, but I just think it's funny.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the podcast today. You can find us on Twitter at InsertGamecast, and we are also on YouTube. And yeah, I still have to figure out how to end these things.
That's the worst thing.
It really is.
Just do what I do and mispronounce your social media. So send us a tweet.
Send us a tweet. Check out our social Myrtla.
We're on the WeTube.